Hey witches, this is Megan.
And this is Morgan, and we are
Two Witches Talking. Welcome back to Two Witches Talking. I'm Megan, and I am joined by the ever lovely Morgan. Hey Morgan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. It's only 65 in the mornings now.
I love that.
So I know, we're about
walks.
The same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so nice. It's so
This
nice.
is the closest to fall I'm going to get, I think.
Oh.
But.
Sorry. But also,
it's okay.
If it stays like this is actually pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. For us, it's like 90. It's still 95 during the day, though.
Interesting. Yeah, there's that big swing, isn't there?
Yeah, the desert.
Yeah. That's oh, well. You just have to dress accordingly for that.
Yeah.
But yeah. And we are officially in October, which is so cool. And so we're just kind of continuing with our spooky season subjects. And today is all about ancestor magic, which I thought that this might be a really cool one. It was actually on our big info dump list from months ago when we first started. And we were like, let's save this one for October, November, spooky season, all that. So, yeah.
I didn't even know it was on our major list, so that's good.
Yeah, totally is. Totally is. Well, and I know that, you and I are not big practitioners of ancestor magic, but there's a certain amount of that we have both done in the past. And I know you mentioned something about some of your family members who had passed, and you got some items, right? And I did a little bit of investigation into my ancestors after a reading I received. So I think we can talk a little bit about that, and also what to do if you have asshole ancestors that you don't want to work with, but you still want to have that connection.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yay.
So tell us about these items that you received, because as soon as you texted me about this, I'm like, I need to know what this story is.
Okay, so my grandmother passed back in 2011 maybe. Mm-hmm. 2010, 2011. But my grandfather just passed in January, and he was 90. My grandfather was in World War II. So
yeah.
He was in his mid-90s when he died.
Okay.
So they had to clean up, but he's been living in the house, ever since my grandmother died. So this was the time for my dad and his brothers and sisters to finally clean out the house. And so he called me one day. He said, "Is there anything that you want?" And so growing up, we used the side door to my grandparents' house as the main entrance because it was right there next to the driveway. And there was a big sign on it that now I know as a Pennsylvania Dutch hex sign.
Oh, okay.
And my grandmother was from Pennsylvania. So, and my grandmother was very Christian, which if you dive down into Pennsylvania Dutch witchcraft, they use the Psalms and stuff like that. So look, the first thing I need to say, just in case any family member happens to hear this, I am not saying grandma was a witch, okay?
Right. Right.
But grandma was from Pennsylvania. And we had these, it was artwork, but it just said bless this home. And it was a gorgeous, huge sign that we looked at every single time we walked in. And then it's so Pennsylvania, if you look it up, it's gorgeous artwork. It's birds and sometimes little flowers. It's very graphical or geometric. Mm-hmm. But these signs were painted on the side of barns and houses to protect the people inside or protect the cattle inside.
Yeah.
And they even had one on, and I forgot about it, there was a knife block in the kitchen that was on the wall, and there was a little cute little thing with two birds and some vines, and that was there too. So I told Dad, I said, I couldn't tell him exactly what it was because, again, I'm not saying my grandmother was a witch, okay? But I told him, I said, there's a big sign, and then, what if you find any more of those around the house, I would love those. And so he found them and mailed them to me. And then he finally asked, he's like, what? He's like, what, why did you want those? And I'm like, oh, they're protective pictures. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. So,
Nice.
so I did get them. I hung the big one outside of my house.
Hmm.
Because it, like I said, it greeted us every single time we went over to visit my grandparents.
Yeah.
And then the knife block is actually in the shape of a shield,
Cool.
with the little picture on the front of it. So I actually hung that above my altar, which it actually coincided with. I did a lesson for my Avalon studies where we talked about a shield and how it resonates with the element of earth, and we were to all make our own shield. So not only did I make a shield for this class, but I realized that this looked like a shield, and
Yeah.
it ties me to my ancestors. It ties me to that protective lineage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hung it above the earth section of my altar as well as part of the ceremony to bless the shields.
Yeah.
So I really loved that too. And again, I'm not saying my grandmother was a witch, but that was my way of honoring just even the stuff I grew up with as a child, but stuff that actually came from my grandmother and my grandfather, and whatever that line could have been. Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. So when I'm there, I need to see like the shield. I'm sure I've seen it. And I love the sign. Like I was struck by that when I visited the first time. I'm like, "Oh, that's just like so homey and just wonderful." So, I love that. What is that about like our grandparents and like the side door? My dad's parents did that too. It was like the front door was for like strangers, and like the side door or the garage door was for friends and neighbors. It was just really interesting. Like my grandfather he would wake up and he'd get ready for the morning, and then like his first order of business was to go open the garage and back the cars out onto the driveway, and then the garage just stayed open, and there was always a door to said garage, and like they had like a screen door and like the actual like storm door, and like it was a nice if it was nice weather, then they would just have just the screen door there, and like literally anybody could just pop in and out. And it was so foreign to me because I was like, no, you use the front door. I don't get it.
I don't know. Ours, I mean, with my grandparents, that door was right, like the driveway came up to that door.
Yeah.
So you had to actually like get out of your car and walk across the front yard in order to get to the front door. But that side door that went into the like laundry room, that's just the one, because we always just pulled up, parked, and then went in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how it was at their house too. It's just kind of wild to me. It must be like a generational thing. I loved it, don't get me wrong, but I was just like, I don't know why we do this here. It's just so funny to me. No, I think it's really interesting. I did, and I alluded to this earlier. I did a reading. I had a reading a couple years ago for my birthday, and from a reader who's local, and they were just very much like, your ancestors are trying to come through, all this, and I was just like, God, how do I deal with that? Because I'm estranged from my family, but I'm like, I'm still connected to those ancestors. And so I kind of sat with it for a while, and I had also had a really cool like journey. I don't even want to, it wasn't like hypnotherapy, but it was kind of similar, where I actually met some of my guides, and I actually went and healed some ancestor trauma with this practitioner. And she was like, yeah, you have all of these ancestors who, are on the other side, like rooting for you and pulling for you and all of this stuff. And I was just like, that is so cool. Like, how do I connect with them? And she was like, well, you don't have to connect with all of your ancestors. And I was like, oh, right. Okay. And so kind of in the same vein of, you can with certain family members do a cord cutting, and it doesn't remove the cord like that connects you to the people like on the other side of them. So like the next generation up, like you don't have to work with all of your ancestors. So if your ancestors were like abusers, or they had enslaved people, or they, I don't know, caused a riot or something, whatever, like if you don't want to work with those ancestors, or you don't want to be associated with them on a magical spiritual scale, you don't have to. And to me that was super freeing, because I've got some really badass ancestors that have really cool stories, and then interspersed through there's some problematic ones, and I'm like, I don't want to work with the problematic ones. So we have that choice, and I think that that's something that's really important to remember as like white folks, quite honestly, because there's a lot of ancestor work and veneration in like hoodoo, voodoo, some other cultures and other traditions, and it feels a little weird sometimes for us to work with our ancestors, but that's where I think a lot of healing comes from, is if we're able to work with those good, more positive influences in our family lineage.
Yeah. And I heard on a podcast one time too, especially, I've seen a lot of stuff lately on, ancestor work, and how actually a lot of people are actually coming down on white people. Like, oh, if you're doing ancestor work and you're a white person, then you need to make sure you do it correctly, or you need to do it fully. And that is under acknowledging the shit that you have in your past. And this is where I guess gained some empowerment about it, was if you can stop that behavior and make sure that moving forward you're educating the next generation on, look, great grandpa had slaves, that was wrong, these are the reasons why, and moving forward we're not carrying on that hate for another race, we are not carrying on that treatment of another human being. Like, this is what we're going to do moving forward. And that's a great way that you can do it as well. Because like, I have somewhere in one of my bloodlines, I'm related to like Thomas Jefferson. Yes, one of our founding fathers. Yes, did a lot of shit to get there. So yeah, it's one of those things of like acknowledging, okay, yes, this is in my lineage, but I'm stopping that shit with this. And it's like breaking the generational bullshit. And you can still acknowledge the relationship, or acknowledge that that is in your past, but that's how you work moving forward, is I'm going to move forward in a much healthier way, educating myself and my children so that we don't continue this shit from our past.
Yeah. And like, just because somebody like Thomas Jefferson or whoever is like in your family lineage doesn't mean you have to contact them in any way. Doesn't mean you have to work with them in any way. None of that stuff. Just because you're related to somebody doesn't mean they automatically get a pass. So, no, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's where, because I've seen some creators talk about it and they're like, no, like, again, like acknowledging and fixing those patterns is important, but it's also important for white people to do ancestor work, because that's how you heal systemic issues in your family line as well. So it's really important.
I think too, if you don't want to work, like ancestors means a lot of things too. So like for me, for example, I follow the Avalonian tradition, which is my spiritual set. So my beliefs stem from Celtic goddesses and, Druid ways and stuff like that. So that's a way that you can be practicing ancestor magic, even if like, especially if you were adopted and you don't know your actual bloodline. So practicing ancestor veneration or whatever for those who have come before you spiritually on your spiritual path, that's a great way to practice ancestor magic if you don't want to acknowledge your past ancestors or you don't know who they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And like you can kind of I've definitely dug into like Appalachian folk magic because I was able to trace like my genealogy through that region of the US. And tapping into that, I realized as my dog goes crazy because someone rang the doorbell. I realized that it's like a lot of the little things that my grandmother would just kind of say in passing or whatever is tied to that tradition. And so it's like I can practice that tradition as a way of honoring my ancestral roots, like you were saying, without picking out somebody specific to call upon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, you can always do your area, like your personal region. So like I live in the Southwest. So for me, especially this time of year, it's very important for me to honor those who came before me on this land, and know like the Native American tribes that were here before we came bludgeoning through, and but honoring the land as far as not only the people that came before, but the plants that grow here indigenously, and the beliefs of the people that have lived here, and the plants, the animals, like all of that are also here in this region as well. So that is also like honoring and acknowledging the people and practices and everything, not doing them, but just acknowledging them, as far as, or honoring them. I'll do like a little outdoor altar sometimes I'll literally pick weeds from my yard, because that's indigenous. That's what, is here, but they're weeds, but they're not. Most of the shit I have growing in my backyard is for hella protection. It's very weird. And they look like weeds, but they're great. But like, that's why I'll set up, I have a little statue that goes out. And, I'll put some offerings to it and stuff like that, just as my way of being like, thank you so much for, every person, every culture, everything that came before me, and here is my veneration of you, yeah.
I love that. And I think we talked about that too in a previous episode where we were talking about like kind of local influences and stuff in our area. And I love that you do a little outside altar. That's so freaking cool. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to pause this for just a second and wrangle the dog. So I'll hit stop and then we'll edit it afterwards. So give me just a second. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
And what I love to do too is I have a few items around my house that are connected to my ancestors. Like I've got this cute little clock that's like, it's like a gentleman's clock that came from the garage of my great-grandfather's house. And he was a jeweler and a watchmaker. And like, we would go and he'd be like, well, you can pick one thing to take home. And like, he had these like drawers of like clock faces and watch hands and gears and all of this cool stuff that I wish like I could still get my hands on. But I have this clock and it's like one of my prized possessions, and it's probably just like junk. But to me, it means a lot because it's like, no, it came from his workbench and his workspace out in the garage. And by the time I knew him well, he was well into his 80s, and so he was never out there. And oh my gosh, we would spend hours and hours as kids playing out there. So connecting, especially this time of year, like if you want to set up like an ancestor altar, connecting with objects that make you think about maybe your grandparents, your great-grandparents who have passed that you did have a good relationship with. That's just another way you can do it.
Yeah, doing recipes like grandma's recipes too, or if you happen to have some older recipes, that's a great way to, because you can just sit there and think about your ancestors like while you're making it, but it's a great way to honor them too. Yeah. That's my favorite way. Yeah.
We do love food around here. I know.
Yes.
Yeah, we would do the, we always called them chocolate crinkle cookies at Christmas time, where like you like roll it up in a ball, and they're chocolate cookies, and then you roll them in powdered sugar so that when they bake, they crinkle and they crack, like earthquake cookies, I've heard other people call them. And I could not find a recipe from my family for those, but Pinterest exists and everybody is so ready and willing to help you with these recipes. So I've definitely like dug through online like recipe sites and Pinterest pins and all that to find something similar, and then recreate it in my own kitchen over the years. And it's just a magical way to do that.
Yeah, it's a great way to update them too, because like some of my grandparents' recipes called for like lard.
Yes.
And I was like, no, I'm good. Let's figure out a substitute for that one. Let's just update this a little bit, because now we know that you eat lard a lot. That's not going to be good for your heart.
It's not good. You know, our ancestors were far more active than we are these days, and I think they could do lard, because then they'd be out, you know, hauling bales of hay or working in a convenience store, a grocery store or something like that, hauling boxes and all this. I think everybody is much more physical than we are these days, so we can't do lard. Or oleo. I don't know if you come across old recipes with that in there. And I had to ask my grandmother, I was like, what is that? She goes, oh, it's margarine. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, I'm just going to use butter because we know that that's better for us now than even margarine is. But yeah. My grandmother, I remember she would make fried chicken, and she had those giant cans of Crisco. And she'd scoop a big old scoop of that out and pop it in her pan and let it all melt in there. And oh, that was the best stuff. Don't get me wrong, but holy shit.
Yeah, no, my favorite thing was, so first off, my grandma couldn't cook. Yeah, so that was always a fun thing. That I have quite a few core memories of.
Yeah.
Burnt meatloaf and you know, stuff like that growing up. But my grandma used to put gummy bears in the fridge because she wanted to keep them for longer, and she wanted them to always be fresh when the grandkids got there. So if you ever put gummy items in the fridge, you know that it turns them rock hard.
Yep.
So that was always a fun thing. So now whenever, it's one of those things, like if I ever, you know, want to remember, like really remember my grandma, or, you know, I'll take some gummy bears and I'll put a few in the fridge just to get them a little cold, not hard.
Yep.
But just a little cold, because we would have to let the gummy bears thaw. You know, we'd have to take them out.
Right.
And let them thaw for a while before we could eat them, so that they would get back to actually being gummy bears.
And did they get back to actual gummy bears, or were they just like really weird?
Yeah, no, they were really weird. They never get back to like gooey, but they go from like brick to softened brick.
Okay, good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least the old school gummy bears back. I mean, we're talking, this was the, you know, 80s and 90s.
Right.
So.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. You know, my grandmother would get like the big things of shredded cheese at Sam's Club, and she would freeze it. And frozen shredded cheese has an interesting texture when it's not so frozen anymore. But you know, there was something charming about it. And I would remember too that she would save the packages that like Mrs. Baird's bread came in. Like, she would just save this plastic bags. And I'm like, Grandma, why do you save those? And she's like, well, you just never know when you might need them. I'm like, okay, that's Depression era kid talking, but okay.
I love that.
This is so funny. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things to remember when you're doing ancestor work is, again, like, you're the magic, and we're all busy witches, and like, we don't have to do a long drawn out ancestor ritual if we don't want to. And I think it is a good thing to kind of remember where we come from and remember what our roots are, especially if we do need to do some of that work to correct those mistakes or atrocities that our ancestors committed.
Yeah.
I think that's valid.
No, I completely agree. And I know we said at the beginning, it's not something that you and I like tend to do full on, as far as, I do know a lot of people that will set up altars, especially this time of year, because the veil between the worlds is thin. So talking to your ancestors can be easier, and honoring them. I'm more of an everyday magic witch, type person. So I will pull out the cookbook and, or I will go through pictures. That is another really great way of going through pictures, maybe even with your kids, and like, oh, I remember, and then going over memories, like, oh, I remember when this picture was taken, I was doing this, and telling stories, because a lot of times that's how people stay alive, even after they're gone, is through stories. And so passing those down too is a very it's magic.
It is.
I will stick to it. That is magic.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's like, I think we all want to find out like where we're from, like the past, all that. Like that's why genealogy is such a popular hobby hobby for so many people. And I mean, I spent many years doing genealogy because it's just like, it's part of that self-discovery thing. So yeah, I love sharing stories. There's some fun stories about some of my ancestors. One of my favorites is my great grandfather, the same one that was the clockmaker, the watchmaker, and all that. He lived in Houston until the day he died, and they did not live in a great part of Houston by the time the 90s rolled around. But he actually picked up a couple of teenagers to give them a ride, and they tried to carjack him. And this is a man in his 80s. And he, in one fell swoop, like he turned the car off, got out with the keys in his hands and said, "No, sir, that is not happening today." And like those youths had no idea what just happened, because they thought, we're going to scare this little, old guy. And I mean, Granddaddy I think he was like 5'7" and maybe 85 pounds at this. I mean, little bitty slight gentleman. And he was just as spry as they came still. And he popped out, and they did not take the car. They just like politely got out and said, "Sorry, sir," and ran away. And I love sharing those stories because it's just like, okay, we're related to some cool people.
Wow.
I know.
That is awesome.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I want my son to know that story because that's something that's really cool. He was driving a regular car in the 90s. Like, this is still relatable to my son, and like he can turn around and tell his kids or, whoever, but he also just kind of knows where he's from, which is cool. So lots of fun.
Have you ever heard of because I heard about this on a podcast probably a year ago. Have you ever done the DNA swabs?
I have thought about it. I really want to, and I haven't done it.
So I never did it because it's so dumb. We haven't gotten to our conspiracy theories episode yet. But I'm just like, I don't want my DNA on file but then I'm like, you know what? They probably already have it, or God knows what they have of
Honestly.
me. But anyway, I've never wanted to do that because I didn't know what they were going to use it for in the future. But I did hear the only thing that has made me want to do it is that someone had their DNA test done so that they could see the region of the world that they were from, and then they could add it to their spiritual practice in an ancestor veneration type way.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, that sounds really fun.
But you could also do like ancestry.com, I think, and like genealogy.com, and you can pull up those census reports. So it's like, I know that my great grandfather on my dad's side immigrated from Salzburg, Austria in like the 1930s. And so it's like, I have that at least to trace back, right? And he married a woman who was first generation from Germany. So I'm like, okay, so like the German Austrian thing, like that's like a very safe place for me to lean into. So if you don't want to get the actual DNA swab, you can kind of tap into those census reports and find that.
Well, I know my dad's had it done.
Okay.
I don't think my mom has.
See,
but
that's always easy.
I almost like, as I think my mom was thinking about doing it, and me just being the person I am, I was like, yeah, Mom, you should get that done and then let me know what it says. And then I was like, if my mom lets me know what hers says and my dad lets me know what hers says, then I got it.
There you go. Perfect. I love it. I love it.
You gotta work smarter, not harder, right?
It's true. It's true. Well, and like, with the state of the world it is right now, there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there, and I did not know until recently that Winkler is like a traditional Jewish name. And my ancestor, Frank Winkler, left Austria in 1939 and literally came to the US with his violin and like a bag of clothes, and that was it. And I start putting two and two together, and I'm like, I don't know that I want to have that DNA on record right now, which I realize it means I'm in a very privileged position because there's lots of folks who are Jewish or of Jewish ancestry, and it's just out there. So I recognize my privilege, and also like, maybe I don't want to do that yet.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
Yeah. And like anything genetic testing, like for medical reasons, I could just get like the actual genetic tests done. So,
yes,
which is always good. But yeah, I hear you. I've always been a little paranoid. And you know, they had one of those companies went out of business recently because all the information got out. I'm like, maybe I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, on a lighter note, I have a wacky card for us to pull.
Woohoo!
So, but yeah, if y'all set up an ancestor altar, like tag us on social media, tag us on Instagram in it. We'd love to see it because it's so cool. I love ancestor work. Like, I like seeing what other people do. All right. How would you kick the bad guy's butt in an 80s action movie using only what you have in the room?
Tarot cards, that doesn't help. Unless I threw them like ninja stars.
I was going to say, you don't have like a stabby crystal? I've got a stabby crystal.
Look, I have some weird stuff in here right now because, so I have hands because they're left over from the live jewelry sale or from the last live sale that we have.
Yeah.
So look, I can smack because these are pretty hard. Like I'm gonna There's some ASMR. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So maybe poke.
There you go.
Eyes. There we go.
Or
I could tickle them to death. Like, okay, so when you said 80s movie, I guess I went Naked Gun.
I love it.
I did.
I
went that direction.
I love it. Amazing. Yeah, I was thinking of Hudson Hawk. I don't know if you saw that one too. Because I'm like, are we going Hudson Hawk like Bruce Willis, or are we going Die Hard Bruce Willis? Like, where are we at? I have stabby crystals. I actually got this year from the gym show. What do we call it? Mystery.
Surprise
specimen. Yeah, that's my golden healer. And it is heavy as fuck, and it is stabby. So there's that. I have many crystals around me. But you know what? I also have like ring lights and tripods and all kinds of things. So, and you have George who might come in and protect you. Who knows? So
my ghost, an office ghost. Yes.
I love it. There you go.
Oh, I do have haunted things too behind me in the cabinet. They're things that came from the haunted antique store.
Ooh, okay. So, there you go.
Maybe just release them.
Just release the ghosts.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. Please tag us in social media, like I asked before, in your ancestor post, in your Labubu posts, in your spooky, scary story time post, like whatever. Or if you go to a spooky haunted location here in October, tag us and share. We want to see those. Send your spooky stories or your witch stories, your spells gone wrong or gone really right, to two witches talking pod at gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at two witches talking, and you can find us on YouTube at Two Witches Talking under the Ancient Goddess Creations larger YouTube channel. We're also on Patreon too, so come hang out. Patreon's free, and all of our videos are there as well. I think that's all the links.
Yes.
Yay, we did it. All right. Hope y'all are having a great spooky season still, and we will see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.